So what I wanted to do next is just talk about the building blocks of a successful tender from our perspective. So we're just going to go through each of these items. The first one is the claims data. This is really important. It's really important, we think, that you get your claims data into an understandable and clear format. And the reason for that is that as brokers, we recognise that insurers will reserve claims, and that's important that they accurately reserve. But I think as well it's important that any reserves are challenged by your broker. And the reason for that is insurers will sometimes use large reserves to justify increases or even to resist reductions. So it's really important that you get your claims data into an accurate and up-to-date format. So any new insurers get a really accurate and clear understanding of what the position is on historic claims. I think as well, any large claims, we would always recommend that you get a bit of a narrative and a bit of a story behind those to explain both how it occurred and then any subsequent action that you've taken to remove or mitigate the chance of that claim occurring again. Your property data, again, really important that this is accurate. Insurers will make judgments based on the quality of your fire and security protections. If they don't know, they will assume the worst, because underwriters are cautious people. So it's, there is a vast difference between a bells-only alarm system and one which has central station monitoring. And a good broker will spend time with you gathering this information and making this clear. If you're going to invest in improvements, we would recommend that you include the details and costings in your market presentation and ask insurers to rate accordingly, because you can then understand the cost-benefit analysis of implementing that improvement, and sometimes also maybe even get a financial contribution from your insurers for that. Also, your sums insured are important that these are accurate to avoid application of average on any property damage or business interruption losses, which would see the final settlement reduced. So again, if you haven't done this for a number of years, we would recommend you get a valuation of your property. Financial data, again, that's important that it's up to date, because that's what insurers will be using to put their rates against. You will get an opportunity at the end of the year to adjust that, so to make final declarations. But again, let's try and get that as accurate as possible. A timetable and a process, we think this is really important, and we probably should have put it first, to be honest. But it is really important that you plan in advance and that you're clear and that you allow time for underwriters to ask questions. It's good for them to allow them to rate competitively, and they can only do that if they're able to really understand your risk and ask questions. There's also a requirement under the new Insurance Act 2015 and your duty of fair presentation that you allow time for insurers to ask questions and for you to give the answers. Lastly, business interruption. I think this is really important in terms of the tender structure, because as we've already outlined, there are nuances for FE colleges and their funding, and that needs to be really understood, because it could cost you thousands if it's not done properly. So we would usually recommend that as part of any insurance tender process that you just review your business interruption cover. Is that accurate? And when was the last time that was changed? Does it really reflect where you are at? And particularly with these local area reviews, does your business interruption need to accommodate for all of your sites? Or if you lost one site, would you be able to move students around? So again, we recommend that you tie your business interruption review into business continuity planning. So that's where we are in terms of the tender process. What we're going to do now is just look at a few of the ways in terms of how you actually engage with the insurance market. So we've outlined sort of 3 principal routes, and Agnieszka will then go into one of these in a bit more detail. As we outlined earlier, much of the output from the local area review has its focus on economies of scale and achieving best value on supply of services. Now, formal procurement for FE colleges probably cannot be avoided, particularly if a college wishes to take a financial advantage of a long-term agreement, which would mean that the contracts are across multiple years and therefore probably in excess of the overdue thresholds. Our view is, if done poorly, procurement can be time-consuming and will have a negative impact on your desired outcomes of improved pricing and cover. And so my principal recommendation here is to take time to consider the various procurement options available. And for sake of clarity, I'll spend a little bit of time on these options, and then Agnes will go into a bit more detail on one of these. You can do a full OJU. There are a number of specific procedures, but unless the college has access to a really strong and experienced procurement individual or team, we would usually say that this is entered into with caution. A proper OJU tender is a lengthy process and requires full, transparent criteria and subsequent evaluation. Most FE colleges that we speak to will probably want to access the various frameworks that are available. Now, the two principal frameworks are firstly the CPC. Now, this is the Crescent Purchasing Consortium. This has been in situ for a number of years and has been reconstituted on a regular basis to reflect changes in the makeup of participants. As a multi-supplier framework, each college submission is part of a mini competition between participants. Each college completes a risk questionnaire requesting the cover that they require. And when the bids are received, the college evaluate these and determine the winning bid. There is support available for both completion of the questionnaire and evaluation of the bids for a fee. In 2017, we understand CPC was reconstituted to provide for 4 principal participants. The key selling point on CPC is that it demonstrates compliance with procurement regulations. The second route is CCS, formerly known as GPS. The framework is supported by central government and allows users to appoint a broker from a pre-approved list. I'm now going to pass over to Agnieszka, who can expand on this.
Thank you, Phil. I will just go through the main points of the Insurance Services Framework Agreement. It has been established in partnership between 4 buying organizations, CCS, YPO, and NIFO. It's open to any public sector body within the UK. It's not specific for FE colleges, but anyone from public sector can access the framework. It does cover a comprehensive list of insurance risks, and it does cover a comprehensive list of brokerage, core, and support services. The relevant lots for you are Lot 1, Insurance and Support Services, when we've got 26 insurers appointed to that lot. Majority of those insurers are broker markets only, which means they require a broker to approach them in order to provide a quote. Some of them are managing general agents, and we do have direct insurers as well. Lot 2 is for insurance brokerage and support services, and on that lot we've got 12 brokers appointed. Well, I'm just going to go through why is this framework really supported by insurers and brokers. Firstly, because the tender fatigue is eliminated and it saves time and resources. The comment I received from insurance industry says that participation in a tender is costly in terms of price and resources. Insurers don't like spending time answering selection criteria, PQQs, answering questions about environmental policy, health and safety policy. They like to focus on underwriting of the risk rather than on paperwork. And you might be surprised, but during a tender exercise, much bigger effort is on insurers who in a very, very short time need to provide you with the right cover that will pay for the claims in 6-10 years time or more. Another important point is that the framework provides a simple route to market. It allows you to enter into long-term agreements, could be up to 5 or 6 years. And one important thing is that only one chosen broker approaches insurance market. This removes uncertainty of which insurer responds to which broker, and what's more important, separates broker from insurer. In this situation, brokers acting on behalf of a customer provides independent advice and evaluates all the proposed bids from insurers. This is just quickly to go through the CCS Insurance Services Framework process. So technically, college uses the framework agreement in two ways. The first step should be to appoint a broker through Lot 2. Customers got two choices. They can use either direct award, the pricing has been established, comprehensive specification is available to customers to view. We ensure that the terms and conditions are fit for purpose. Or the customer can run a further competition to test and benchmark brokers appointed on the framework. Once broker is chosen, the broker will work with you to understand your risk, understand your requirement, to put market presentation together, just help you engage with your organization beyond the known risk. And that one chosen insurer will go to Lot 1, to those 26 insurers, to actually do the capable insurers and receive quotes from them. The broker as well, the main point on the insurance services framework is that the broker will evaluate all responses received from the insurance market and will prepare recommendation for you. And then it's up to you then to decide which cover is the best for you. The main benefits of the framework are it's a quick and easy access to brokerage services through direct award. And the main point is around the independent role of a broker. Comprehensive broker specification and pricing is available for you to use. Like I said before, we establish the terms and conditions of the brokerage services. You do have facility to test markets and benchmark all the providers. The time and resources are saved for not only for you, but for brokers and insurers as well. The due diligence has been completed, so all the providers went through a selection process. So by accessing the framework agreement, you're actually using a compliant route to market. And we do, on the framework agreement, we do have a really good spread of insurance markets. So broker is your gateway to the insurance market. He's your full-time specialist with professional skills in handling insurance business. So when it comes to brokerage services, obviously you need to incur some costs, but what you need to focus on is what you're actually getting for the money spent on the brokerage services. Choosing a broker with the right skill, knowledge, and market relationship is vital to the successes of your procurement strategy. And with this in mind, I will hand over to Phil now, who will explain now what you should consider when appointing a broker.
Thanks, Agnieszka. I think it's a really good question. You know, why use a broker? And we recognise that this is a valid question. And we recognise as well that consumers receive a fairly regular media message questioning the value of middlemen, asking what it is that they're adding to the process. I think key to reviewing this question is understanding that an insurance policy is a legal and binding contract. It is based on providing accurate information reflecting the duty of fair presentation that I mentioned earlier. And as such, negotiating and entering into a contract, we think, requires professional support, in the same way as you would seek out a solicitor if you were entering into any other legal contract for independent professional advice. We also recognise that there is a tranche of direct insurers who represent a portion of the market share. Compliance and regulation of the insurance industry means that direct insurers can only really comment on their own contract and that they're unable to offer advice or recommend cover outside of that. So the need for independent advice means that a fair number of insurers will only transact business through a broker. It's also because they don't have the infrastructure in place to manage the day-to-day support for policyholders. So in terms of what areas we would recommend you look for when you're appointing a broker and when you go through Lot 2, we've highlighted 5 areas. And again, whilst there is guidance on the framework, you're pretty much at liberty to set the criteria as you want. So these are the things that we think you should consider. Firstly, experience. Does the broker have the ability to guide you through the procurement required and reduce the risk of non-compliant processes? How involved in the education sector are they, and how conversant with the risk insurance issues are they? Secondly, the market authority. Does the broker have the presence in the market to deliver meaningful results? Are they able to articulate your risk profile to prospective insurers? And will they be able to create a positive risk profile for your procurement? These are all really important areas when you're considering a broker and what responses they're going to get when your market presentation goes out to the insurers. Thirdly, I think this is really important, the account management and support. And through the broker process, you should be, identifying what account management support your broker will commit to. Will services be provided locally or from a dedicated centre? And what's really important for you here? Is it important that they're local, or is it important that they understand the education sector, or is it a combination of those factors? Value for money, that's clearly important. Do the fees submitted in the process represent value for money? If very competitive bids are submitted here, is the service compromised, or are earnings being properly disclosed? And lastly, the added value aspect. What additional support is your broker offering? What aspects of their additional service will your college genuinely benefit from? Sometimes brokers will put things in there which look good, but actually, what benefit am I going to get from those? And within, the procurement process, you're completely at liberty to ask those questions and put the brokers under a bit of scrutiny in terms of, these added value things. Do they actually help me? How will my college benefit by putting that into place? So I think we're going to conclude now in terms of what your goal should be. And there's three takeaways that we wanted to identify here. Firstly, the appetite for risk. And I think this is important based on what we've said about your risk profile. And what we're trying to do here is link your insurance and risk management program to the college's overall objectives and its KPIs. And we think it's only by doing this that you can make judgments on the success or otherwise of the insurance program. Secondly, manage the risks you carry. Our position is that with good independent advice, buyers will make an informed decision as to what risk that they have and what is the best way to manage that. Management of risk includes your insurance procurement, but it needs to be combined and linked with your other internal strategies, policies and procedures. And again, that needs communicating. And lastly, coming back to that point about your organisation's objectives. Sometimes insurance and the procurement of insurance is kept in a bubble and away from everything else that your college is trying to do. What we recommend you try and do is link the insurance procurement and purchase to your wider financial and strategic objectives. And it's only by doing that that you'll get financial support for initiatives and you'll actually be able to measure it. So it's not just kept in a bubble, and it's not just an insurance renewal that you have to do once a year, and there's a bit of pain involved, and no one actually really benefits. If you link it to your organisation's objectives, we think you're going to see a lot more value from the process, and you'll be able to demonstrate some really good procurement.
Thank you, Phil. We are going to take a look at a couple of questions from today. The first question is from Chris, and the question is it better to split the program into lots or ask for a whole package?
It's a good question. I think, one of the benefits of the CCS framework is that you are allowed to split it down into lots, and you are allowed different insurers to respond to different aspects. And as I said earlier, one of the features that we've seen in the insurance market in the last few years is the entry of niche insurers. So these insurers will want to write, for example, the personal accident and travel for the students, the motor insurance for the college, maybe the trustees indemnity, but it's only those particular classes of insurance that they're interested in. Now, we encourage that because we see that their premiums are competitive and their cover is broader than has been available historically. But those insurers don't want to write the buildings and contents liability, buildings and contents insurance, the liability insurance, or maybe other classes. And so by breaking it down into lots, we can encourage the participation of those niche insurers. Now, outside of the education practice, Gallagher have commercial clients. Not one of those commercial clients would have one insurer across all of their different policies. It would be too much of a coincidence that you've got one insurer that's the best at everything. And so by doing lots, you're able to pick and choose and build what we call a best of breed program.
Thank you, Phil. The second question is from Paul, and the question is, if we use a broker to conduct a further competition, but then direct insurer wins the business, will I still need that broker?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think, we do have some direct insurers and we encourage participation with those direct insurers. The question really comes back to what does the client want? Does the client just want the broker to carry out a procurement exercise, or do they want advice and account management support going forward? Because we have seen examples of direct insurers where they can't actually do everything. So there may be, for example, things around large construction projects or terrorism policies or fine art, for example, where that direct insurer just can't do it, and therefore the college is needed to access a broker for placement of those policies. I said it just comes back to what the college wants, and often the direct insurers, there's a sort of a tripartite relationship there where the college can engage both the broker and the direct insurer, and that's not unusual. So it really comes down to what the college wants at the end of the day.
Thank you, Phil. The final question is from Anna, and the question is, would you recommend to take out long-term agreement?
Yeah, some good questions here today. Long-term agreements, I think, in the past have provided financial discounts. As a broker, I think it's important that I make clients aware that long-term agreements are principally written for insurers' benefit, because if it's a good risk and they haven't had claims, then the client is obliged to renew with the insurer. But if there's something which the insurer doesn't like about it, then they can increase the rates and they can walk away from that particular risk. So it does give some budgetary certainty. What we would usually recommend is that there's some quid pro quo with a long-term agreement. What is it that the client's getting from it? Okay, it's getting some budgetary certainty, but not absolute budgetary certainty. So why don't you build into that some sort of low claims rebate? So if the insurer has got a good clean risk in there and they're underwriting the risk at a profit, why don't we see some return on that based on the claims performance? That encourages the client to focus upon risk management as well, and it encourages the insurer to participate in the risk as well.
Thank you, Phil. Right, like I said at the beginning of this webinar, I will create Q&A document and share it with you in due course. I just would like to say a big thank you to Phil, who has kindly shared with us the latest changes in the market and how they're going to affect you, and provided us with valuable guidance on insurance procurement. On behalf of YPO, I would like to say thank you for joining us today. I hope you find this session useful. You can always contact directly myself or Phil if you've got more questions. And just have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.